Hi, I'm Michael. Today I'm going to be sizing a customer's ring. This is an actual ring from an actual customer. It's going to be going down 3/4 of a size. Since each size is 2.2 millimeters, this one's going to be going down 1.65. My other shop, I have the ring size guillotine that just chops the piece out, but at this shop, I don't have one, so we're measuring it out the old-fashioned way and cutting it out by hand. Takes a little bit longer this way to cut it out by hand versus the guillotine that's pretty instantaneous, but not too much longer. This is the way most jewelers do it. Not everybody has a $400 guillotine to just cut the piece out. Then we stop just before we get all the way through because that last cut can sometimes bend the shank, so I like to just pull it out that last little bit. Just a tiny little piece at 1.65 millimeters. And then we go in with our number 2 needle file. It's smooth on one side, so that way it only files the one side that you're filing at, and you're not accidentally filing the other side of the ring at the same time. So we just kind of clean up those edges there, make sure they're nice and smooth. So there's a few different ways to bring it together. For the purposes of this video, I use the hammer for demonstration. I actually use 2 different methods in this video for demonstration. So the hammer is nice when sometimes the pliers don't work because maybe there's diamonds or something on the side, so you can use a hammer, gently nudge the sides of the ring back together. This ring's so thin I could have probably done it just with my bare fingers, but again, for the demonstration purposes, this is how you would do it with a hammer. And then sometimes to cinch up the tiniest amount or just to do it in the first place, these pliers here are specifically designed for doing just exactly this. They apply pressure on 2 sides, causing a curvature or bending of the ring, so that way you can bend the ring smaller, or if you need to just kind of tighten up that seams, because when you go to solder it, you don't want to have any gaps in there. You want it to be as tight as possible. When you get these pliers, they're pretty rough from, usually they're made in Pakistan, Turkey, India, sometimes Taiwan if you get the cheaper ones. And so what you're going to need to do is you're going to have to go in and round off the edges, so that way they don't leave any marks on your rings. Now this cup here is a mixture of denatured alcohol and boric acid. Denatured alcohol is just a way of suspending the boric acid. This is my GRS soldering plate with its 3rd arms on there to help you hold on to stuff while you're soldering it. So we're going to dip that in that boric acid, get it soaked real good. This is going to protect the metal from discoloring and from fire scale. Always gives that nice green glow of nice green flame there with that boric acid. We'll just get this clamped in here to my 3rd arm here to holds the ring in place. Clip a couple tiny pieces of solder. Grab the torch. This is a Smith mini torch. Pretty much standard in the jewelry industry today. Usually use my hand as a comparison. About the width of a hand is about the size of the flame that you need for before you add the oxygen for a typical ring sizing. There are different tips that you can get for the Smith mini torch, so if you're doing something smaller, you might use like a number 4 torch for a tiny little flame. I usually use a number 7 for a big wide flame. Mostly because when you're sizing, it's good to heat up the whole ring, and you don't want to get too focused on one little spot. So the number 7 gives nice, larger flames, that way you can heat up the whole ring, and then you can get in there when you need to kind of put the solder right there where you saw it melt there in that joint. So put a couple drops of solder on here, just make sure it's all the way through. This is a Dursten soldering pick I'm using to pick up that solder and put it in place there. Nice good solder. It's always good to put it on a piece of steel to take that heat out. And I'll take our little GRS soldering stand here and set it aside. Put our bench pin back on. Grab our ring now that's cooled off. And we're gonna go put it in some pickle. Pickle is another acid. It kind of counteracts that boric acid that we had put on earlier and kind of washes it off. Two acids kind of counteract each other. Cleans it all up. We rinse it off and bring it back and start working on the filing and polishing of the ring. The first thing I like to do is make sure that the ring's the right size before you spend a whole lot of time trying to refinish the ring, because if you messed up somewhere, something went wrong and you got the wrong size, you don't want to spend a lot of time refinishing the ring only to find out it's the wrong size. So first thing, clean out the inside of the ring, make sure you got the right size. I prefer these little sanding mandrels here. They're a little quieter and easier to work with. Some jewelers like what I call the flapper. It's kind of a split mandrel where you kind of slide the sandpaper in there and it kind of flaps around. Makes a lot of noise. I really don't like it. You don't have as much control with it. These only touch where I want them to touch, and then you don't have that excess flapping around, sanding stuff you didn't intend to sand. Goes pretty quick. Realized my camera got moved a little bit there, so you weren't able to see what I was doing. So we start with the sanding stick, with the 240 grit sanding stick here. It is literally just a wooden stick that we wrap sandpaper sheets around. And then as one side wears off, you can tear off that side and keep going, so you can get several uses out of one wrap before you have to redo it. It lasts, depending on how many rings you're sizing or how much work you're doing, they can last a few weeks to a few months depending on how busy you are. But usually about once a month, you usually get, most shops you got to replace it. Sticks are usually sold. I mean, you could use just, I've seen jewelers use paint mix. The paint sticks that you get for mixing paint, they're a little thin, but I've seen jewelers use those. But the sticks I'm using are the standard sticks that you get from any jewelry supply. It's just a little wooden stick, and I prefer to tape the sanding paper on there. Some jewelers will staple them, but I find if you staple them, the staples will scratch your piece if you end up hitting a staple. So now we're filing it with the number 2 file. This is that same file we used earlier to clean up the cut that we had made. Coincidentally, it's the same file I use for filing prongs. This is my, out of all my files, this is my most used file. And then going back with the 240. And when you sand the outside of the shank lasers, you notice I'm rotating it and not just going in a straight direction. So you're going to rotate both with the circumference of the ring and then also rocking back and forth, because this has the shank has a little bit of a curvature to it. Now we're going to switch it up to the 1000 grit. Same thing, just another stick wrapped with sandpaper, except it's 1000 grit this time. And we're going to do the same thing. The more work we do here, the less work we got to do at the polishing machine, so we're just trying to get all the scratches out. This ring actually had quite a bit of nicks and dents and scratches up on the shoulders up there, on the left and right side of where the stone is. So I spent a little extra time more than most ring sizings on this ring. It's a fairly large diamond. Wanted to make it really nice and get it back to looking brand new again. So I spent a little extra time doing more polishing than I normally would. So here, this is a gray wheel. It's a silicone wheel. It's really good about going back and taking out all the scratches on the inside. A lot of jewelers will kind of, they'll sand the inside and then they'll go to the polishing wall and use a inside ring mounted roll to polish at the polishing machine. I always like to do the inside of the polishing of rings under the microscope and get them to a real nice mirror finish. Kind of overkill because nobody sees the inside of the ring when it's on your finger, but it's something I like to do to really make sure that the ring goes out the door in a brand new condition. These gray wheels wear out pretty fast, but they're not too expensive. They come in 1/4 inch, 1 inch, or even a knife edge that you'll see me here in a minute to kind of get up next to the head of that stone to get rid of some of those nicks and scratches that are in there. You kind of see me going in at an angle with this knife edge, just because I wanted to get a little closer to that head where there were some scratches. Kind of hard to see here on camera, but really wanted to get all the nooks and crannies cleaned up and making it look real nice. So now I switched that 1 inch, well, kind of a worn down 1 inch, but just kind of clean up the rest of that shoulders of those rings where all those nicks and scratches are. This is a Rhodium handpiece that I'm using here. It's kind of become my go-to style of handpiece. It's a very similar design to the Swiss Tech. I don't believe it's as repairable as a Swiss Tech, whereas the Swiss Techs you can completely disassemble them and replace every part. Rhodium doesn't usually make theirs as repairable or easily repairable as the Swiss Techs, but it does seem to be very durable. Some of the other hand pieces, they don't last as long. The one with the push lever that seems to be really popular. It used to be really popular until I think everybody got tired of replacing them. I was going through those about once a year. Then I switched to a Swiss Tech when I was in North Scottsdale. And then since then I've switched to these just because they're about half the price of the Swiss Tech. And they seem to last, well, I'll let you know when they wear out. I've worn the paint off of a couple of them and they're still going. So I think I own 2 of them right now. So I swapped have two of these hand pieces for my three benches that I work at. So this device here is just to hold the ring while you polish the inside. Like I said, I like polishing it at the bench to get that mirror finish. This has a twofold purpose. One, it keeps my hands less dirty, keeping all that polish off my hands when you're polishing the inside. Rings also get kind of hot when you're polishing the inside like that, so you don't burn your finger while you're polishing the inside. I'm just kind of hitting in between these prongs in here, somewhere where you don't really get as good of a job at the big polishing wheel, so I like to go in here with this little wheel here and get the sides of these prongs, really getting those little details. That polish I'm grabbing there from the bench is a oil-based polish. Something kind of newer to the jewelry industry in the last, I don't know, 5 to 10 years. It's a lot better on the lungs. The old silicone-based were pretty dusty, real messy, put a lot of particles in the air. I can only imagine what the lungs look like of the older jewelers. Thankfully, I'd only been in the industry for about 5 years when this stuff came out. And so it creates a lot less dust, and because it's oil-based, when you put it in the hot, soapy ultrasonic water, it just dissolves instantly. The old stuff would kind of stick to the bottom of the stone, and you'd be scrubbing it with a toothbrush and holding it under the steamer for a long time, trying to get all the polish that's stuck to the stone. So this stuff has been a game changer as far as speeding things up and making life easier for jewelers. So almost done getting this all cleaned up, all the prongs, every little nook and cranny that I can find that I don't think I'll be able to get with the big polisher. Almost there, there we go. The polisher I'm using here is a Dursten polisher. Using some 6-inch lap wheels with that same oil-based polishing compound. And so now I'm just polishing up that shank at high speed. Goes a little bit faster on the big wheel than trying to do it at the bench. My purpose of doing it on the bench is getting those little nooks and crannies that this big wheel wouldn't be able to get or get as well. This just takes a few minutes here. Might do a video eventually on this Dursten polisher. I've been using this particular polisher since about November of last year. It's not too bad for polishers as far as polishers go. I do prefer an enclosed polisher. I'm not a fan of these polishers that draw from the bottom. I prefer when they draw from the backside, so it's not drawing the dust from underneath where you're working. Another problem with this particular Dursten polisher, if you're listening out there, Mr. Dursten, is that the screen or the plastic bottom of the polisher has the holes in it. Your rings and chains can drop through it and get stuck, and it can be quite annoying. And then the filters for this are metal framed, aluminum framed filters that are $50 a piece, and at my pace I need to replace those once a month. So there's 2 filters, so $100 a month for filters is a bit pricey on the high side. Doesn't seem like they need to be have a metal frame around that. That doesn't seem to be any benefit to that. They could just be cardboard frames like any other filter. So kind of a pricey polisher. I prefer my RB polisher that's enclosed with the cardboard framed filter. Those filters are about $10 and they're much bigger, so they last about 3 months. Instead of these little 10-inch filters on this machine. There's one filter for each of those polishers left and right that you see there. I believe the RB polisher is also about half the price of this machine, so live and learn. So right now we're going to clean up this ring. Like I said, once you put it in the ultrasonic, it's almost instant that polish just melts right off in the hot soapy water. Get the ring all cleaned up, and then we'll steam it off real good. And so since this is a white gold ring, we're going to need to rhodium plate it. So rhodium is a metal in the platinum family, and it's too brittle to use for jewelry, but it is a super white metal. So since white gold is not pure white, being though that gold is a yellow metal, and we add typically nickel, but for allergies you can also get white gold that is made with palladium, which is also in the rhodium family. And so since it has that yellow in it, it usually gets a grayish, yellowish color depending on the quality of it and the carat of it and different things of that nature. It's never a pure white. So what the industry has always done is plate it with what's called rhodium, and this metal is suspended in an acid, and it's electroplated on there. So what this electroplating is, as you can see that blue machine there, is it sends electricity through a acid, and in that acid, this first one is electroclean. So it's a type of acid that cleans off any oils or any residues that didn't come off in the cleaner or the steamer, making sure that the surface is as clean as possible so that rhodium material will stick to it. And so we put it in there for 30 seconds at, I like to do 10 volts. I think the instructions are 6 to 10, something like that. So yeah, it's usually, I believe it's 30 seconds for 6 volts. I like to just crank that thing up and get that super clean. And then we dip it in a water rinse, and then we dip it in another acid. It's called an activator, and it kind of counteracts that first acid to allow the rhodium to stick a little bit better. And then we'll rinse that activator acid off, and then it goes into the rhodium. And the rhodium is a yellow fluid, and which is kind of ironic because we're going to make the ring white. So we put in this yellow fluid called rhodium, and again we put the electricity through it, this time only at 3 to 6 volts for 30 seconds. And after that it comes out a bright white. So instead of kind of a grayish color, or sometimes the 10 karat whites can even be a little bit yellowish, it'll come out coated with this bright white, really looking brand new, sparkly, like a brand new ring. Now, because it is plated, that is something that does wear off. And so depending on your wear and tear and how rough you are with your hands, it could be anywhere from 6 months to a year before you got to get that redone. Currently, I usually charge about $66 for rhodium. Some stores charge as much as $100. But here's our ring, all sized to the correct size, ready to go.